Hi everyone and welcome back to the Architects channel. My name is Sarah and in this video we are going to talk about how to identify gaps in your submission for the ARB Prescribed Exam. We're going to talk about the 4 types of gaps that you are likely to find in your work, how to fill them, and how to keep track of them as you're producing more information to fill them. And finally, I'm going to give you an example of how I managed to fill one of the gaps that gets missed the most by candidates while doing their submission. And make sure you watch the video until the end because there will be a special giveaway that I don't want you to miss. Okay, let's get started. Once you've decided on the optimal number of projects and type of projects that you want to submit, and once you started mapping them against the 33 criteria, you are likely to find some gaps. It's very unlikely that that mix of projects will cover all of the 33 criteria, and you will need to produce some more information to fill some of these gaps that will emerge. So what is considered a gap? There are 4 types of gaps that you need to be aware of. The first one is the most obvious, and that's if you have no piece of evidence against a certain criterion. And that's a problem because in order for you to pass the exam, you need to meet all of the 33 criteria and there are no exceptions. The second type of gap is that if you have only one piece of evidence against a specific criterion. And that's not good either, because if the jury on the day assess that piece of evidence and are not really convinced, then they don't have anything else to assess, and therefore they will consider that that criterion is not met. So that also, is considered a gap. The third type of gap is a tricky one and is one that gets missed the most, and is, say you have several pieces of evidence against a specific criterion, but they only cover that criterion partly, and you kind of missed 1 or 2 keywords in that criterion. To give you an example, GC 9.1 states, the graduate will have knowledge of principles associated with designing optimum visual, thermal, and acoustic environments. Let's say that in your projects you covered extensively vistas, thermal mass, etc., but you don't have anything against the acoustics part of the criterion. Then even if you've covered the rest extensively, then there's still that missing piece that is considered a gap. The fourth type of gap is also a little bit tricky to assess, and that's if you have covered the criterion several times, but you don't feel that the evidence is strong enough. Maybe it's not organized well enough, maybe it's a little bit weak and just needs a little bit more of material to strengthen it. And it's a bit tricky to assess, but it's usually a gut feeling. You know when something is not convincing yet, and you kind of need to produce some extra material to make it more convincing. Once you've mapped your projects against the several criteria, you start realizing that there's quite a lot to keep track of. Some criteria are covered several times across several projects, and it can get a little bit tricky to keep track of everything. So for me, the most straightforward way of doing this was to just create an Excel sheet where I replicated the comparative matrix and I just mapped all my project against the criteria and ticked the boxes where I thought I met the criteria. I mapped my chosen projects against the 33 criteria and checked the boxes where I believed I had evidence to meet the criteria. Then I indicated how many times I covered the criteria and highlighted the areas where I thought I needed more information. I added notes to indicate what type of gaps I identified and ideas on how this can be filled. You can use this also as a tool to keep track of your progress as you're producing more information and update your table as you go. That hopefully ensures that you make sure that you're fully covered and nothing gets missed. Great, now you've mapped your projects, you've identified all the gaps and you want to start filling them. But how do you actually approach this? It can be difficult sometimes to just be, productive and be targeted in your approach, especially, sometimes I remember having a couple of hours during the weekend, between a busy life, being an early career professional full-time, and having social and family commitments. Sometimes it can be difficult to find that little piece of time where you want to focus and produce something, and the last thing you want to do is just waste your time and be unproductive. So because of that, I developed a 5-step framework that will help you be very targeted in your approach. So the framework is asking yourself these 5 questions. First, what do I need to show? Second, what material do I already have that I can work with? Third, what material is widely available that I can analyze or refer to? 4, how can it look good with minimum effort? And a bonus question, can I cover more than one criterion with this extra work? 2 or multiple birds with one stone. Let's illustrate this in an actual example. As an example, I want to use criterion GC 9.1 because, as I mentioned previously, this is one of those criteria that gets overlooked the most, and not because it's complicated or anything. It's because it's made of several parts, and you might cover some of these parts extensively but miss one word, and that means that it's only covered partially and it's not covered fully. So in this case, I knew I had covered extensively the visual and thermal optimal acoustic environments, but there was nowhere in my submission where I had covered how to design optimal acoustic environments. So if we go back to that 5-step framework that I explained, what do I need to show? I need to show that I have knowledge of principles associated with designing optimal acoustic environments. What material do I already have that can be a starting point? I didn't have like a cinema or a theater where, this could be ideal, where designing acoustic environments would be ideal. But looking at my work, I had a music room in the artist house, and that was a good starting point. I created a little diagram with icons to analyze this little space and find out what I wanted to achieve. What material is already available that I can quickly analyze or refer to? There are several companies in the UK that offer and manufacture acoustic panels, and then they have lots of case studies on their website, and they have technical documents that I can download and analyze and apply to my project. I then showed what solution I thought might work well, how it would look, and how it would technically work. How can it look good with minimum effort? Well, I had a SketchUp model of the house, so I could, very quickly create nice, quick visuals using the model. And the bonus question, can it cover more than one criterion? And the answer is yes, it could cover also GC 5.1, which talks about the aspirations of building users. I then made sure that this was highlighted and referenced at the end of the page. I just want to leave you with a final thought when you are producing extra information to fill the gaps for the ARB Prescribed Exam. And the idea is, it doesn't have to be exceptionally good. It needs to be clear, well organized, and it needs to be aesthetically appealing. But the ARB jury are not looking for a competition entry. They're just looking for the evidence, and it just needs to be clear, easy to find, and very well organized. So don't waste your time trying to get everything perfect. In this case, perfect is the enemy of good. So just produce that piece of information and move on to the next. Lower the pressure. I hope you found this video useful. To get you started, and as promised, I have produced a brand new Excel sheet where you can map your projects against the criteria, and that will hopefully help you stay organized and find all the gaps in your submission. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.